Hello everybody, this is Carmen Killed the Cat, and welcome to your 7th Lua tutorial. In this tutorial, we will be going over functions. So let's get started. I'm going to assume you know what a function is because this isn't a beginner's tutorial. So let's get into declaring a function. So there are two ways to do it. The first way is this. You write function, not like that, finally. Function, and we'll call it add, because this function is going to add two numbers. Pretty simple. So add, and then for the parameters, you do open parentheses, and then the parameter names, and then end marks the end of the function, and then you tab in once. So that's the first way to do it. You just say that it's a function, and then you have the name of the function, then the parameters, and then you have the body of the function, and then at the end of the function you just write end. So the second way to do it, you have the name of the function equals, because a function is a variable, and then we just do function, and we'll do num1 and num2, and end marks the end of the function, and then you have the body in here. So these do the exact same thing. It's your choice which one you want to do, but I prefer to do this one. So let's create the function. It's just going to add two numbers, so we'll do return num1 plus num2. And now to call a function, we just write add, say 2, 3. So we'll run this, and I forgot to output that. Print add 2 and 3, so this should output 5. So the next thing we have to get into is variable scope. So it's a lot different than most other programming languages. So in most programming languages, say we declared a variable as x and set it to 10 in here. This variable would be local to this function, so it wouldn't exist outside of this function. So say we tried to print it. I don't know what that star would do, but let's not put it there. So say we tried to print x. In most programming languages, it would just say x does not exist, and that would either create an error or it would just say nil. But if we run it in Lua, 5, 10. So x does exist, even though we're not printing it from this function. So that means x is global. And in Lua, if you don't put the local variable modifier in front of a variable, it's global, no matter where you declare it. So if you want a variable to be local, you have to give it this local modifier. It's the only variable modifier in Lua, and a lot of people will forget to put it here, but it's very important if you don't want to cloud up the global space. So remember this, and scope, just remember that scope does not work like it does in most other programming languages. So the next thing we have to get into is pretty easy. It's copying a function. So let's say x equals add. So I think I went over this in the first or second tutorial, but functions are considered variables, so you can copy a function into another one. You won't use this until we get to making classes in Lua, but it's good to know now. So to prove that this works, x 2, 3, or we have to print it. Print x 2, 3. So now let's run this. 5 and 5. So that's how you copy a function. So the last thing we have to get into in this tutorial is whether Lua passes in function parameters by copy or by reference. So in C++, if you aren't familiar with this concept, you can either pass in parameters to a function by copy or by reference. So if you pass it in by copy, then at the beginning of the function will create a copy of the original variable that was passed in, and then use that copy instead of the original variable so that the original variable never gets modified. Or you can pass it in by reference, and then it won't create that copy of the original variable, and the original variable can be modified in the function. So it's faster when you're using big data types to pass it in by reference, and there's ways to make it safe in C++, but that's irrelevant. So Lua passes in variable types by copy, so let's create a variable to prove this, number1. So we'll do add number 1 and 3, and then we'll do print number 1, print number 1. So we can get rid of this, and let's change the function up a little. So we'll say num1 equals num1 plus num2, return num1. So the function will do the same thing, just in a slightly different way. So what will happen is number 1 equals 10. Number 1 will be passed into the add function, and it's 10. So number 1 will become num1, and if variables in Lua are passed in by copy, then the function will create a copy of number 1, and that will be num1. But if it's passed in by reference, then num1 will be number 1. So then num1 is set to num1 plus num2. There's no plus equals operator in Lua, unlike C++. And then it will return num1. So let's see what happens. So we get 13, because 10 plus 3 is 13, and then 10. So number 1 was never changed. So variables in Lua are passed in by copy, not by reference. So that's all for this tutorial. In the next tutorial, we'll do something. I'll think of something. I just can't think of what we have to do next now. So see you in the next tutorial.